The funny thing about being underestimated for most of your life? After a while, it stops stinging. It just becomes routine, especially during family gatherings. At least, that's what I kept telling myself as I made my way up the gravel driveway to my aunt's farmhouse tucked away in northern Maine, where we always held Thanksgiving. I'm Rachel Dawes, though to my relatives, I'm just Ray, the artsy oddball who never quite fit into the Dawes mold. I'm 39 now. The wool coat I had on was tailor-made in Florence, though you wouldn't know it. Plain gray, nothing flashy, intentionally forgettable. No need to ruffle feathers. Not yet. Well, look who remembered how to get here, my cousin Drew called out from the porch, leaning on the railing with that smug little half-smile he's worn since high school. Ray, the Etsy Empress, he added. Drawing a few laughs, I returned a tight-lipped smile, my thoughts drifting to the Q4 projections waiting on my office desk back in Chicago. They had no clue what kind of earthquake was about to hit. Inside, it was business as usual. Aunt Margot ladling out passive-aggressive remarks like gravy. My brother Jonah gloating about his hedge fund gig. Drew and his sister Brooke still working in the family lumber operation like they were born into royalty. Ray, seriously? Aunt Margot gave my coat a once-over, nose wrinkled. That looks like something from a church basement sale. Don't you run a little online shop, or whatever? Still selling used scarves? Brooke added with a smirk, sipping apple cider like it was aged Bordeaux. I didn't get the chance to answer. My assistant, Jenna, walked in from the kitchen, carrying a tray of hors d'oeuvres. Drew raised an eyebrow. And who's she? My assistant, I said simply. A beat of silence followed. You have an assistant? Brooke blinked, genuinely puzzled. Jenna set down the tray and handed me my phone. Ms. Dawes, your legal team just confirmed everything. You now officially hold full ownership of the Dawes Timber Company name. The room froze. Drew paled. I took a slow sip of wine. Oh, right. I forgot to mention, I bought the company. Happy Thanksgiving. I raised my glass, masking my grin with a drink of Pinot Noir. The oh-so-sacred Dawes way had driven their precious company straight into the ground. While they were busy playing favorites and recycling ancient business plans, I'd been building something massive, quietly, digitally, efficiently. Point one click, one calculated risk at a time. So, speaking of wins, Brooke chirped, practically buzzing in her chair. Wait till you hear our big update. We're expanding, she announced, her voice bouncing off the beams overhead. Dawes Timber is launching 3 new plants next year. Dad's even considering taking us public. I almost laughed into my glass. They were planning an expansion. Meanwhile, I'd seen the court documents. Their suppliers hadn't been paid in 3 months. A lien had just been filed against their central processing mill. That's bold, I said calmly. Of course, you wouldn't really get it, Uncle Frank chimed in, not even trying to hide the smugness. Running a real business takes more than flipping handbags online. Ray. Laughter echoed across the room. Oh yes. Ray, the creative misfit. The one who walked away from Dawes Timber 7 years ago when they offered her a warehouse job to learn the ropes. Remember when she told us to go digital? Drew laughed. She claimed the market was shifting. Or when she wanted to back that resale app. What was it? Brooke chimed in. Eclipse. Eclipse something? Eclipse Luxury Group, I said under my breath. That's it. Brooke snorted. Thank God we didn't listen. We'd probably be flat broke by now. Totally, Drew added, grinning. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't even need to look. I already knew. The Dawes Timber bankruptcy had just gone public. Right on cue. Dinner's ready. Aunt Margot called, waving everyone to the long, polished table. We filed in, name cards set at each seat. Naturally, Brooke was planted beside Uncle Frank at the head. They stuck me down by the fireplace, squeezed between Cousin Travis and Great Aunt Edie, basically exile. So, Rachel, Aunt Margot said as she ladled stuffing onto my plate, have you thought about getting a real job? I heard the post office is hiring. Another round of chuckles rippled through the table. I stabbed a slice of turkey and tried not to think about the day I handed over a full modernization plan, straight from my MBA capstone and 2 years working in logistics. Uncle Frank had barely glanced at it. Then he folded his hands like he was delivering gospel. "The warehouse is where you'll learn what matters," he'd said. And now? That warehouse was mine. "It'll teach you humility," he'd told me when I turned down their oh-so-generous offer to push boxes on the floor. Instead, I walked away. I sold off my tiny stake in Dawes Timber for what they thought was easy money, shares that by morning wouldn't be worth the paper the contract was printed on. With that cash, I made my move. I put it into a rising but still low-profile luxury resale company, Eclipse. Today, Eclipse Luxury Group owns 30 upscale boutiques, 6 booming e-commerce platforms, and as of this morning, its first fully operational manufacturing arm. I set my fork down and glanced around the table. "Actually, I've been meaning to talk business," I said. Mom let out a barely audible groan. "Please don't start again, Ray." "Yeah," Brooke added with a dry laugh. "Because your last brilliant idea went so well. Didn't that Eclipse site get bought out or something?" "It did," I said with a quiet nod. "See," she said to Uncle Frank, practically glowing with self-satisfaction. Good thing we ignored her. My phone buzzed again. This time, I took it out and tapped the screen slowly, making sure every eye was on me. "Problem with your little side gig?" my dad asked, clearly annoyed. "No," I replied as I gently placed the phone next to my plate. "Just got confirmation. Dawes Timber's bankruptcy was approved this morning." Total silence. Brooke's fork clattered against her plate. "What did you just say?" Uncle Frank asked, suddenly sounding unsure. "Your bankruptcy filing," I repeated, calmly buttering a dinner roll. "Chapter 11 just got the green light. Though with your current liabilities, I'd guess it'll roll into Chapter 7 by next quarter." "That can't be," Drew said, panic starting to creep in. "How would you even know that?" I smiled. "Oh, I didn't tell you?" I reached into the small handbag they'd all rolled their eyes at when I walked in, the one they figured was some knockoff. "Eclipse was acquired by Morgan Holdings," I said casually, then paused for effect. "And I own Morgan Holdings." The room went absolutely still. Dad's face looked like all the color had been drained from it. Brooke stared at me like I'd slapped her. "You're lying," Uncle Frank croaked. "This is some kind of prank." "It's not," I said simply, pulling a manila folder from my bag and setting it squarely in the center of the table. "Here's the debt purchase agreement. I now own every lien, every outstanding loan, every IOU your company couldn't pay. If you've ever been building something in silence while the people around you wrote you off, this moment is for you. Would you like to see for yourself?" I asked, my voice cool and maybe just a little amused. I opened the folder and spread the paperwork across the white linen, right between the cranberry sauce and the gravy boat. Bankruptcy filing. Debt acquisition paperwork. Credit ledgers. "This one's my favorite," I said, tapping a page with one manicured finger. "A full breakdown of what you owe. Morgan Holdings currently owns 82% of your outstanding debt." "That's not possible," Brooke whispered, stunned. "You run a website for used clothes." I laughed. I honestly couldn't help it. "Is that seriously what you've been telling yourselves I've been doing for the last 5 years?" I asked, scanning the faces around me, each one stuck somewhere between horror and disbelief. "While you were all mocking my little online shop, I scaled Eclipse Luxury Group into a $3.2 billion company." $3.2. Travis choked on his wine, barely managing to keep the glass in his hand. "Give or take a few million," I said with a shrug. "It's been a decent quarter." My dad finally spoke up, though his voice trembled under the weight of barely contained anger. "If this is real, if you really bought up our debt, why would you do that to your own family?" I set my wine glass down with quiet precision. "You mean the same family that acted like offering me a warehouse gig after my MBA was some kind of gift?" I said calmly. "The one that laughed off every digital strategy one pitched? The family that made me the butt of every holiday punchline?" Silence. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. "Excuse me," I said, pushing back my chair and standing. "That's probably my assistant with the final documents." The hardwood creaked beneath my heels as I stepped into the hallway. Behind the closed dining room door, The unraveling had already begun. She's bluffing. Check the balance sheets. Call every lawyer now. I smiled and took the call. Yes, Jennifer? All set, Ms. Monroe, she said. Bankruptcy's been confirmed. Acquisition papers signed. Should I deploy the team? Give it 5 minutes, I replied. Let them stew a little. When I came back in, the room was a frenzy of phone checking. They were all huddled around Uncle Frank's screen, eyes darting through a flood of panicked emails and court notifications. Well, I said as I settled back into my chair, shall we talk next steps? My team will be here shortly with the acquisition documentation. Team, my mother repeated faintly. Right then, the doorbell rang. I checked my watch and smiled. That'd be my legal and financial advisors, I said cheerfully. Hope you don't mind if they join us for dessert. Dad stood up, face flushed and trembling. Hold on just a damn minute, Rachel. No, I cut in, my voice sharp but steady. You're bankrupt. You defaulted on $142 million in loans that I now control. So here's what's on the table. You can cooperate with a managed sale and restructuring, I said, pausing, or I initiate a full liquidation first thing Monday morning. Brooke burst into sobs, mascara streaking down her cheeks. But the expansion, the new mills, she stammered, were never going to happen, I finished. Dawes Timber has been insolvent for months. Did anyone here even read the reports? Or were you all too busy swapping titles and planning mixers to notice you were bleeding money? That's when Jennifer entered, flanked by 3 attorneys and 2 financial consultants, all in tailored navy suits with leather briefcases in hand. The contrast between their collected professionalism and my family's stunned faces was almost poetic. Ms. Monroe. One of the lawyers greeted me with a courteous nod. Shall we get started? Please, I said, motioning toward the pumpkin pie my mom had just set out. Grab a slice while we go over the details. My mother's recipe is excellent. For the next 2 hours, we went line by line through the entire situation, missed payments, spiraling liabilities, and my terms for acquisition. I'd spent a year putting this together, collecting their debt piece by piece through shell corporations while they ignored every warning sign and doubled down on failure. This is comprehensive, Uncle Frank finally muttered, flipping through the binder. Unlike some people, I replied with a faint smile. I actually understand how to run a business. By the end of the meeting, Dawes Timber was theirs in name only. And even that wouldn't last. The terms I offered were more than fair, all things considered. But no one at that table was left confused about who held the reins now. As my team packed up, I stood and addressed the room. Mom, Brooke, Travis, you're all being let go. Please clear your desks by Monday. You're firing us? Brooke shrieked. You're our family. No, I said coolly. I'm firing unqualified managers who only got their jobs through family ties. If it makes you feel better, I hear the post office is still hiring. I smoothed the front of my soft gray dress plain by design, not because I couldn't afford better, but because I didn't need to flaunt anything. Thanks for dinner, Mom, I said. The turkey was great, even if we didn't quite make it to dessert. Rachel, my father's voice cracked as I headed for the door. Was this all just about revenge? I turned back once, looking at the half-eaten plates, the stunned faces, the legal papers spread like a wound in the middle of the table. No, Dad, I said. This was business. I paused at the threshold. The revenge? That's just a bonus. As I walked back to the gravel driveway, I heard Brooke wailing behind me, something about losing her house, her Pilates instructor, her country club membership. Travis yelled something about taking me to court, but there was nothing left to litigate. I slid into the black S-Class Mercedes I'd leased just for today, subtle revenge, cloaked in luxury. As I pulled away, I caught them in the rearview mirror, clustered like confused extras at a window, watching me disappear. Then my phone buzzed one last time. A message from Jennifer. Congratulations, Ms. Monroe. The acquisition announcement is queued for Monday. The screen lit up just as I merged onto the highway, the farmhouse fading behind me like a past life I'd finally outgrown. I let myself smile. Next Thanksgiving would be different. Would they still call me the family embarrassment when I signed their checks? Still whisper about my little website while refreshing their LinkedIn pages? Doubtful. 1 week later, Dawes Timber was officially reborn as Eclipse Manufacturing, folded neatly into the Eclipse Luxury Group portfolio. I kept the original tree ring emblem my grandfather designed. Heritage matters, but added one new detail, a tiny eclipse symbol tucked into the roots. A subtle, permanent reminder, the family reject had eclipsed them all. Brooke ended up at a mid-tier department store. Not Walmart, but barely a step above. Travis and Nate moved out of Vermont entirely, reputations singed beyond repair. Last I heard, Travis was managing warehouse ops in Arizona. Uncle Frank disappeared into retirement, his legacy reduced to a line item on a balance sheet. Dad called once, about a month later. Left a voicemail. Started with, "I was wrong about you." Ended with, "Would you consider bringing me on as a consultant?" My assistant sent back our standard rejection letter, the same one we use for interns who don't make the cut. That Thanksgiving, I didn't go back to the farmhouse. I was in Milan, finalizing a licensing deal and running a global business, including the one that once defined their entire sense of worth. But I did send cards. One to each of them. White linen stock, embossed with the Eclipse Manufacturing logo. Inside, just one sentence. "Thank you for the business lessons. Hope you're enjoying your real jobs." Sometimes success is the best revenge. Sometimes the girl they laughed at becomes the woman they answer to, and sometimes karma walks in wearing heels and serves pie with a smirk. If you've ever been the one they rolled their eyes at across the table, the one mocked, ignored, or politely dismissed, you know what it feels like to carry a plan in silence while everyone else talks. I didn't fight back with screaming matches or slammed doors. I got to work. Quietly. Steadily. Behind the scenes, and now I don't just stand despite their doubt. I stand because of it. If this hits something in you, if you've built quietly, if you've been underestimated, if you're still building, I'd love to hear your story. Leave a comment. Share when you stopped asking for approval and started carving your own path. Anyone out there still stuck at the base of someone else's ladder, hear this. You don't have to climb their ladder. You can build your own. You can fail without applause. Succeed without permission, and return only when you own the damn building. You don't owe them the journey, just the results. And when those results speak, let them roar. If you believe in second chances, quiet grit, and poetic justice, subscribe. Not just for me. For all of us writing our own endings, because not every victory makes noise. Sometimes it sounds like a knock on a boardroom door. Sometimes it tastes like cold turkey and warm revenge, and sometimes, it just feels like finally hearing your own voice, louder than theirs. Thanks for listening to mine. Let's keep the conversation going, because no one defines your worth but you.